I had the opportunity to welcome home members of the Montana National Guard this week. On short notice, they were activated, flew to Washington, D.C., and fulfilled their mission to ensure a peaceful transfer of power. And now, thankfully, they're back home. Only weeks before, in the same U.S. Capitol, it had been under siege by a violent mob intent on destroying our democratic institutions. It's a day we won't forget. It revealed just how fragile our republic can be. It also reaffirmed, though, how resilient we are as a nation. Hours after storming the Capitol, the House and Senate came back into session and finished their work, certifying the next president of the United States. That resiliency is also what defines us as Montanans. This last year has brought real, serious challenges, but through it, we've seen the resiliency of Montanans. The first case of COVID was reported in Montana on March 11th. Almost 11 months later, Montana has seen 93,000 cases, and sadly, more than 1,200 Montanans have lost their lives. In the 4 months after the first case, more than 150,000 Montanans filed for unemployment. And since that time, an untold number of businesses have had to close, some for good. Men and women who took an idea and invested their savings and energy and lives saw what they built disappear. The victims of pandemic-induced restrictions and mandated closures. And despite all of these stark challenges and dark days, Montanans remain resilient. We found our heroes in the doctors and nurses on the front lines, like Dr. Paul Johnson, a husband and a father in Great Falls. He works at Benefice, and for 13 weeks, Dr. Johnson treated COVID-19 patients and lived out of his camper. He did that and went to that great length so he could keep his family safe and keep the virus out of their home. We found our heroes in our first responders, like firefighters, law enforcement officers, and other first responders in Butte. Despite the pandemic straining their resources, they still showed up to host a parade for the Montana Special Olympics. We found our heroes in our educators, like Christy Borge, a fourth-generation Montanan who teaches 11 students in a one-room schoolhouse in Polaris. When the pandemic disrupted regular instruction, Christy had summer school outside just to keep her students on track. We found our heroes in truckers who kept our supply chains moving and grocery store clerks who kept the shelves full, like Myron Oschenbacher, a Montanan who's been trucking for 30 years. With truck stops, rest areas, and restaurants closed along his route, Myron had to do without some basic necessities, all while keeping our supply chains moving. We found our heroes in small business owners and others who helped support our response to the pandemic, like Steel Toe Distillery in Potomac, which partnered with veterans nonprofit organizations to make hand sanitizer, like Dayspring Restoration, whose employees washed and disinfected first responder vehicles for free, like Billings Clinic, which provided free child care to essential healthcare workers. We found heroes next door in our friends and neighbors, the people who checked on seniors to make sure they were okay when the state was under a lockdown, the people who sewed masks for healthcare providers and emergency responders when PPE was in short supply. In Montana, neighbors help neighbors. It's what we do, and it's what we've done during this difficult year. Our Montana resiliency has shone bright